One of the quickest ways to sabotage a healthy relationship is by keeping a mental scoreboard. I've seen it so many times. Someone gets into a relationship, they invest, they give, they show up, and somewhere along the way, they start to silently take note of everything they've done. I made time for him on my busiest week. I cooked for him when I was exhausted. I listened to all his problems when he had a rough day. And those little notes turn into one big thought. He owes me. Now, let's get one thing straight. There's nothing wrong with being generous in love. In fact, that's one of the most beautiful things about a real connection. We do things for the person we care about without keeping score. But the moment we begin expecting something in return, especially without expressing what we need, we turn love into leverage. And here's the real danger. The man doesn't even know he's being measured. He's living in the relationship, responding based on his own emotional rhythm. And suddenly, bam, you hit him with, after everything I've done for you, and he's left blindsided, confused, and maybe even a little resentful because from his perspective, it wasn't a contract, it was just love. But we say those things because deep down, we're afraid. We're afraid that if we don't point out what we've done, we'll go unnoticed. We're afraid that if we don't make him aware of our value, he'll take us for granted. So we start thinking, maybe if I remind him, he'll appreciate me more. Maybe he'll step up. The irony is, that very act often pushes him away. It doesn't make him appreciate you more. It makes him feel like love is a test he's failing, a test he didn't even know he was taking. And when someone feels like they can't win with you, when they feel like nothing they do is ever enough, they stop trying. Now, I'm not saying you should stay quiet when you feel unappreciated. Not at all. I'm saying express what you feel in the moment it's happening. Don't let silent resentment build until it explodes in the form of a scorecard. Say something like, hey, I felt really unsupported when I was going through that yesterday, or it would mean a lot to me if you noticed when I go out of my way. That's communication. That's honest. That's connection. But saying, I've done A, B, C, and D for you over the past month, that's not communication. It's accounting. And love isn't an accounting exercise. People don't fall in love with you because you did 5 things for them and they feel indebted. That's not love. That's guilt. And guilt doesn't build attraction. It builds obligation. You want to be loved because you're you, not because you did a bunch of things to earn it. And when you give, it should come from a place of alignment with your own values, not a strategy to win someone over. So here's the truth. When you start counting what you've done, it often means you're not getting what you need. And instead of asking for what you need, you're trying to earn it. But love doesn't work like that. You don't earn emotional safety or deep respect or lasting intimacy by accumulating points. You get it by showing up as your whole self, by expressing your needs with clarity, and by allowing space for the other person to show up authentically too. And that's where self-worth comes into play. When you know your worth, you don't give to prove it, you give because it feels right. You give because it's who you are. And when someone doesn't meet you with the same energy or effort, you don't beg for reciprocity. You take that as information. You adjust, you pull back, or maybe you walk away. But what you don't do is beg someone to appreciate you by listing your value. Because the moment you have to explain why someone should see your worth is the moment they've already shown they don't. So don't keep a scorecard. Keep your standards. That's the difference between loving generously and loving desperately. One makes you magnetic. The other makes you forget who you are. And your value, it was never in the list of things you did. It's in who you are when you're not trying to prove anything at all. Because true love isn't measured, it's felt. One of the quickest ways to undermine attraction in a relationship, especially in those early stages when everything is still forming, is by constantly voicing your insecurities about other women. I've seen it again and again. A woman starts getting close to a guy, and instead of staying grounded in her value, she begins to worry out loud. She sees another woman comment on his post, or she notices someone glance at him in a restaurant, and suddenly it's, she's really pretty. Do you think she's more your type? Or you probably get hit on all the time. Why would you even be interested in someone like me? At first, a guy might try to reassure you. He might say all the right things. You're the one I'm interested in. No, I didn't even notice her. But if that becomes a pattern, if every week it's another question, another comparison, another crack in the foundation of your confidence, it begins to change how he sees you. Not because he's shallow or unkind, but because we're all drawn to emotional security in a partner. And when someone constantly verbalizes their fear that they're not good enough, they put the emotional weight of their self-esteem onto the other person. That's exhausting. And it chips away at attraction over time. What's interesting is that this doesn't mean you're not confident in general. You might be killing it in your career, have amazing friends, be deeply thoughtful, and live a full life. But if in the context of romance, you repeatedly show that you're insecure about your value, especially in comparison to other women, it sends a different signal. It tells him, I don't trust that I'm enough. Now, let's be honest. Everyone has insecurities. Every single one of us has moments of doubt. We all compare. It's human. But there's a big difference between feeling insecurity and feeding. When you bring those thoughts to the surface and give them a voice constantly in the relationship, you feed them. You give them life. You invite your partner to see you through the lens of your fear rather than through the truth of your value. And here's the thing, you're not actually looking for answers when you ask those kinds of questions. Do you think she's prettier than me? Isn't about getting his honest opinion, it's about asking him to patch a hole in your self-worth. And that hole, it can't be patched from the outside. No man can fill that void for you, because even if he answers, no, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, the question will return. It always does. That's the nature of insecurity. It's a hungry emotion. It never stays satisfied. So what do you do instead? You recognize when that voice comes up, the one that wants to compare, to question, to overanalyze, and you meet it with compassion. You say to yourself, I see you. I know you're scared, but I'm not going to let you speak for me today, because that voice is not your truth. Your truth is the part of you that knows your value, that knows what you bring to the table, that knows you are not in competition with anyone. This is where the real strength comes in. It's not about never feeling insecure. It's about being the kind of person who can feel insecure and not need to dump it into the relationship. That's emotional maturity. That's inner strength. That's attractive. When you lead with security, when you radiate, I'm good, I know who I am, I'm not worried about what you see in other women because I know what I bring, you shift the dynamic completely. Now he sees you as someone who is self-assured, someone who adds peace to his life, not drama. You become someone he doesn't want to risk losing, because emotional safety is rare. Emotional confidence is rare, and people are drawn to what is rare. And I want you to think about something else here. If he does want to be with someone else, if he is easily distracted or still playing games, no amount of your insecurity will prevent that. In fact, it'll often accelerate the breakdown. The more you try to police his attention, the more he feels suffocated. The more you obsess over what he might be thinking or who he's texting, the more you push him into emotional withdrawal. Because no one wants to feel like they're constantly being tested. No one wants to feel like they're always under suspicion. So if he's the right guy, your security reinforces his attraction. If he's the wrong guy, your security filters him out fast. Either way, you win, because standing in your value not only keeps the right men engaged, It weeds out the ones who don't deserve your energy in the first place. Your energy is precious. Your attention is a gift. Your love is something to be earned. Don't hand over that power by making comparisons to people who aren't even in your lane. You are not competing. You are choosing. And that mindset changes everything. Stay in your lane. That's where your power is. Look, I get it. We've all had past relationships. Some were sweet, some were brutal, and some left marks we don't even realize are still there. And when you meet someone new, someone who feels like a fresh start, it's tempting to want to be completely open. You think, if I just lay it all out, if I tell him everything I've been through, he'll understand me better. He'll be more careful with me. He won't make the same mistakes. But that's not how it works. Here's the truth. When you share every detail of your past relationship, how toxic he was, how long you stayed, the lies, the betrayals, the emotional roller coasters, you may feel like you're building closeness, but what you're actually doing is handing over the blueprint to your pain before this guy has even earned your trust. You're laying down your emotional scars like a roadmap, hoping he'll drive more carefully, but he hasn't even proven he knows how to drive yet. A man does not need to know the play-by-play of how your ex hurt you to love you well. That's your healing work. That's your growth. When you overshare too soon, especially in the early stages of dating, what you're really saying is, look how much I've been through. Please don't do the same. But that tone doesn't come from strength. It comes from fear. And relationships built on fear don't last. Now, I'm not saying be fake. I'm not saying lie or pretend you've never had a relationship before. I'm saying be intentional, be strategic. There's a big difference between vulnerability and spilling. Vulnerability is powerful. It's when you say, yeah, I've had my heart broken before, but I've learned from it. It's when you acknowledge the past without living in it. Spilling, on the other hand, is unloading emotional baggage on someone who hasn't even committed to carrying a backpack. Here's something most people miss. When you tell a man every painful chapter of your history, he's not just learning about your past. He's creating a lens through which he'll see you. You don't want his first impression of your emotional world to be the story of your wounds. You want it to be the story of your strength. You want to be seen as someone who has overcome, not someone who is still overcome. A guy might listen patiently, he might nod along, even feel empathy. But deep down, you could be creating silent doubts in his mind. Is she still holding on to that pain? Is she comparing me to her ex? Will I ever be enough for her if she's still carrying that weight? And those thoughts can create distance before you've even built a real connection. You don't owe your new partner a history lesson. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself the grace of moving forward without dragging old ghosts into new rooms. If he's worth it, he'll want to know you, not the version your ex left behind, not the woman who was hurt, but the woman who healed. Think about this. Have you ever met someone who was so at peace with themselves, so grounded, that you could tell they'd been through things, but they didn't need to talk about them for you to feel it? There's a quiet power in that. There's strength in restraint. There's something incredibly magnetic about a woman who doesn't feel the need to explain everything, who trusts that her presence now is enough. You see, when you keep certain details to yourself, you're not being dishonest, you're being wise. You're giving the relationship space to grow in the present instead of being suffocated by the past. You're allowing intimacy to build naturally, not forcing it through shared trauma. And when the time comes, if it comes, and the relationship has earned that level of closeness, then maybe you share more. But by then, the foundation is strong. The context is different. You're not seeking validation. You're offering perspective. So don't feel like you need to prove your worth by showing your battle scars. You've already proven it by being here, by still having the courage to open your heart again. That's enough. He doesn't need to know what broke you to see your beauty. He just needs to be present enough to recognize it. Choose to be known for your energy now, not your pain then. Choose to lead with the lessons, not the losses. Because the woman who walks forward with grace, who doesn't apologize for her past, but doesn't dwell in it either, that's the woman who commands attention. And if a man is truly the right one, he won't need your whole story to decide you're worth staying for. Let's talk about something that most people overlook when it comes to attraction and dating: keeping a little mystery. Specifically, when it comes to your dating strategy, or the so-called rules you live by, how long you wait to respond, whether you sleep with someone on the third date or the 30th, if you never initiate texting, or if you always wait for him to make the move, those are yours. They're your standards, your boundaries, and they're important. But here's the key: you don't need to announce them. When you sit across from someone and start spelling out your whole playbook, saying things like, well, I don't usually text first, or I'm making you wait because I don't do anything before X amount of dates, you immediately pull yourself out of the moment and into a performance. You're no longer being present and connecting authentically. You're reciting rules instead of revealing who you are. And guess what? That makes the whole interaction feel mechanical. And let's be honest, a little unpredictability is sexy. A little mystery gives a person something to lean into, something to figure out. If they already know exactly how you operate and exactly what to expect on every step of the way, then where's the discovery? Where's the fun of learning who you are through your behavior, your vibe, your energy? Now, I'm not saying you should hide your boundaries. Absolutely not. But there's a massive difference between silently enforcing a standard and loudly announcing it like a disclaimer before the relationship even begins. You don't need to explain why you didn't text back right away. You don't need to tell him you're holding off on intimacy because it's your rule. Just live it. Let your behavior reflect your standards without putting a signpost on every move. Because here's the thing: when you tell someone exactly how your system works, especially early on, you remove the possibility for them to organically earn your respect. Instead, they start gaming your formula. If they know you wait 3 weeks before you let your guard down emotionally, they'll hang in there for 3 weeks, jump through the hoops, and think, okay, now she's mine. But is that really what you want? Someone following a checklist to get to the finish line, or someone who's consistently showing up because they value you for you? It's the difference between someone playing the game and someone being real with you. And this is especially important if you're someone who's been burned in the past, because when you've been hurt before, it's easy to become very structured, rigid even, in your dating approach. You tell yourself, okay, this time I'll protect myself. I'll wait exactly this many dates. I'll never show interest first. It becomes your armor. But sometimes that armor becomes a wall, and that wall stops real connection from forming. Let your actions speak louder than your policies. If you have high standards, great. Let him see them by how you move, how you respond, how you carry yourself. That communicates a lot more powerfully than any monologue about your boundaries. Think about it. If someone touches a hot stove, they learn not to do it again. Not because the stove explained how hot it was, but because they experienced it. You are the same. Let someone experience your value, not just hear about it. And on the flip side, if you're telling a man your rules, hoping he'll understand how to treat you better, you're actually doing him a disservice. Because the kind of man who's right for you doesn't need the rule book to act right. He won't need to be told, I expect consistency, because he's already showing up consistently. He won't need to hear, I don't chase, because he's already pursuing you. By keeping your dating philosophy a little more private, you're not playing games, You're just allowing space for authenticity. You're letting the dynamic unfold naturally, which gives you the best chance at real chemistry and a connection built on mutual curiosity rather than strategic maneuvers. Let him earn the knowledge of who you are over time. Let your actions speak. Let him wonder, not in confusion, but in fascination. Let him learn that your attention is a privilege, not a guarantee. And most importantly, show him that you're not following a script. You're following your intuition, your truth, your self-worth. When you live from that place, you don't need to tell a man your rules. He'll figure them out when he realizes he's dealing with a woman who doesn't need to say she has standards, because she is the standard. You know, there's something really important that doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to relationships. And that's the idea of protecting the relationship from the outside world. And one of the biggest culprits that can quietly undermine a connection is this: bringing your family's criticisms into the relationship, especially the things they've said about the person you're dating. Now look, I get it. When we care about someone and we're also close to our family, it's natural to share bits and pieces of what's going on in our love life. You want to vent, you want advice. Maybe you're trying to figure something out for yourself, so you go to the people who've known you the longest. But here's what we often miss. The words we share with family have a much longer shelf life than the moment we share them in. You might forgive him for forgetting your birthday plans. You might move on from that silly argument about who should have called who. But if you've run and told your sister or your dad or your mum, you know what, he's selfish. I don't even know if he's emotionally mature enough for me. They're going to remember that even after you've let it go. What does that do? It plants a seed. Now, every time they see him, they're looking at him through the lens of your worst moment. They're evaluating everything he says and does, trying to confirm the picture you painted when you were upset. And here's where it gets dangerous. Once they form an opinion, they often don't shift it easily. And then the next time you talk about him, they might reinforce that judgment. He did that again? Why are you still with this guy? They start creating friction between you and the relationship you're trying to build. Not because they're malicious, they're probably just trying to protect you. But their protection starts to feel like pressure. Now, let's flip to the other side. Imagine he finds out what your family really thinks of him. Even if he's mature, even if he's self-assured, that's a weight, that's a barrier. It's hard to open up to someone when you feel like you're constantly being evaluated by the people in their life. It creates this tension, like no matter what he does, it'll never be enough to win them over. That's not a great environment for love to grow. So the question becomes, what do you share and what do you keep private? If something is serious, I'm talking about red flag behavior, abuse, patterns that are truly dangerous or manipulative, then yes, you absolutely should talk to someone you trust. You need a support system, especially when your emotions are clouded. But if it's just everyday bumps, arguments, or frustrations, moments that you're going to work through and learn from, be selective. Protect the sanctity of the relationship. Not everything needs to be broadcast, not trial. And guess what? If he does consistently fall short and you end the relationship, you can walk away with clarity and then share what you've learned in a way that isn't fueled by heat of the moment emotions. We don't always realize how sacred certain things are until we let too many voices into them. A relationship is like a house you're building. If you keep inviting guests in while the walls are still being put up, they're going to have opinions. They'll say the kitchen's too small, or that wall should have been blue. And suddenly you're building it for them, not for you. So ask yourself, who are you really talking to when you share those criticisms? Are you seeking clarity, or are you seeking validation for your pain in the moment? Because clarity often comes from communication inside the relationship, not commentary from the outside. And when you can make that distinction, when you learn to protect what's being built between the two of you, you give love a space to grow without interference. That's the kind of strength that builds lasting connection. Protect the connection, not the drama. You see, one of the biggest mistakes people make, especially women who are ready for something real, is wearing their desire for a relationship like a billboard. It's not that wanting a relationship is wrong. In fact, it's beautiful. Wanting to share your life with someone, to build something meaningful, that's human. But the moment that desire crosses the line into need, you give away your power. You shift from a place of abundance into scarcity, and that changes how you show up. It changes your energy, your choices, and most importantly, how someone perceives you. Think about it like this. When someone senses that your entire emotional fulfillment is hinging on whether they choose you or not, that's a lot of pressure. And pressure kills attraction. It takes what could be a naturally unfolding connection and turns it into a job interview, except one person is desperately hoping to get hired and the other is just browsing. That imbalance is palpable. And even if a guy doesn't consciously register it, he feels it. He feels the weight of being someone's everything before he's even decided if he wants to be something. There's a massive difference between a woman who says, I know what I want and I'm not here to waste time, and a woman who gives off the vibe of, please let this be it because I can't do another disappointment. The first woman is grounded, centered, and self-assured. The second is anxious, outcome-focused, and often ignores red flags just to keep the fantasy alive. Guess which one makes a lasting impression? Now, I want to be clear, being vulnerable is not the same as being desperate. Vulnerability is powerful. Sharing your intentions is powerful. But there's a way to express your values without attaching your self-worth to whether or not this man validates them. You can want love without making it the thing that defines your happiness. That's the balance. That's where your strength lives. Let me give you a real-world example. Imagine you're on a date and he asks, so, what are you looking for? You could say, honestly, I'm really ready to find a serious relationship. I'm done with games. Sounds good, right? But now, look at the energy behind it. If there's a tone of longing or frustration, like you're carrying the exhaustion of past disappointments into this moment, it can feel heavy. It subtly communicates, I need this to work. And that takes the focus away from getting to know him and shifts it toward trying to fit him into a pre-written script. Instead, a powerful woman answers the same question with calm clarity. I'm at a point in my life where I value connection, and if the right relationship comes along, I'm open to it. But until then, I'm living a life I'm proud of. That energy, that's magnetic. It tells him, you're not chasing, you're choosing. You're not trying to be chosen. You're in the process of choosing what's right for you. You're not coming from lack. You're coming from fulfillment. The irony is that when you stop needing love to feel whole, that's when the right kind of love usually finds you, because people are drawn to those who already have something going for them. They're drawn to someone who's passionate, self-respecting, and emotionally grounded. When you're deeply connected to your own life, your friends, your purpose, your joy, you become the kind of woman a man wants to be with. Not because you need him, but because he knows his presence in your life would be earned, not assumed. So keep your standards. Don't dim your light or pretend you're indifferent when you're not. But also, don't spill your deepest longing for commitment in the first few conversations. Not because it's shameful, but because that part of you is precious. It deserves to be shared with someone who's earned your emotional trust, not someone who just happened to sit across from you at dinner one night. And if you've been in that place where you've overshared or leaned in too quickly or felt like you gave away too much of your heart too soon, I want you to know it's okay. We've all done it. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But let that be a lesson, not a pattern. Let it teach you that the most attractive thing you can do is live your life as if love is the bonus, not the goal. Anyway, when the right person shows up, they meet you in your power, not in your need. Because the truth is, the moment you stop trying to prove you're worthy of love is the moment you become undeniable. Every frustration needs a roundtable discussion with your family. Because there's power in being able to hold space for your own emotions. There's maturity in knowing when something is just a moment, a disagreement that doesn't need a committee, but just a conversation between two people. What you're doing when you don't run and tell everyone every time there's a problem is you're protecting the intimacy. You're not hiding things, you're choosing discretion. You're choosing to handle things directly with the person who's actually in the relationship with you. That's not secrecy. That's emotional self-respect. And when you do that, when you create that boundary between your relationship and your family's judgments, you give the relationship a real chance. You give it room to breathe. You allow him to show up without feeling like he's on.